we already recording? Okay.
Yeah, I'm already recording. Yeah.
Well, basically, Dean Radin talks about, what we talk about synchronicity and stuff, it isn't random and doesn't just happen by coincidence. Things, because it has to do with consciousness. And what you can see in random number generator, they set up about 75 of them around the globe, both in satellites and around different universities. And what they see is that when a lot of people react to something that's happening, you got some kind of shift in one direction in consciousness, or a big massive. It could actually just be like a couple of thousand people meditating at the same time. But on the 11th of September, they saw a really big spike in anomaly from, the random noise, because basically random noise, then you're supposed to get like, because then it randomly generates ones and zeros. So then over a period of time, you're supposed to have 50% zeros and 50% ones, and that's going to stay the same all the time. But even when you have a single person meditating or focusing on one of these random number generators or some other machine that does something randomly, then you're shifting the equilibrium out of randomness. So then you can get suddenly 75% ones instead of 50%. And the stronger someone and the more talented or the stronger they are with this, the more they can affect these kind of things. So basically, the random number generators is basically like a cosmos, like a consciousness seismograph that it can measure, that it can see big shifts in our collective awareness, or even in a group of individuals. So what it says here is that I can read this. On September the 11th, 2001, a few hours before the World Trade Center was attacked, there was a large anomalous spike in the 37 generators being monitored at that time. A uniform rise in what statistics call variance. In a sense, the generators were extremely noisy, says Rand. Over the course of the rest day, the opposite happened. There was a big drop in magnitude that was uncharacteristically quiet and unique for the entire year. The same thing happened in Madrid, in general with this kind of disaster. And what I'm thinking about when I read about this is, the elite knows about it. They know that on certain dates, like the 11th of September, and especially like 2020 now, when there seems to be a big gateway for changing things, then they know about the power of consciousness. And if they can have enough of us affecting or believing in a certain outcome, then we as a collective will generate something that is far from random. It's because I think this randomness is because all our consciousness, our different individual consciousness, all the living beings have their own will and go here and there and want this and want that. So then that's why you get this randomness, because everyone wants different things. And suddenly, when you get a very big number of people basically believing the same story, the story that they are selling us. That's why I think that when it got really noisy before the accident, that was because people could, you call it premonition, when you feel something. Yeah, then people could sense that something was coming along, because he, in the beginning of the text, he talks about that these kind of things happen with pictures. If you have a computer generating, showing random pictures, then before some kind of horrible or, a picture that feels very
ominous or something like.
Yeah, or that's scary, or that affects you very negatively. Yeah. In opposition of like neutral or happy pictures, then people will react before the picture's even shown, even though it's supposed to be generated randomly by the computer, so therefore no one should be able to know. But because everything is about matter and consciousness, we somehow pick up on it before, so we can react. That's why people can sense that something dreadful is going to happen. So basically, I think before 11th of September and all of these things, especially when they're trying to take advantage, because they have very old esoteric knowledge of how we work in consciousness and everything. And they're trying to, they want to try and create their own world with this. So they're trying to use as tools. So basically, before he got a very noisy reading from all these random number generators because people were reacting to that something was going to happen. But after, when it says that it was uncharacteristically quiet, I mean that you had a very low randomness. I mean, for me, that sounds very much like instead of having randomness, you have a very specific purpose. I mean, a lot of consciousness have a very specific aim or belief in what's going to happen. So then you don't have that randomness anymore.
It sounds like there was this guy, Adam Michael Curry, and he also is into random number generators. And he did this study in a room where there was this light bulb was connected up to the number random generator, and it would point.
Can you say that again? What did you connect up to now?
Like a lamp. It was like a lamp that was connected to the random number generator, and it would point its head of the lamp to every corner of the room, like, you know, the four corners of the room just at random. So it should have technically over time been 25% each corner.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah, the longer it goes, the more
right. Yeah. Well, so they put a plant in one corner of the room, and over time it ended up realizing that it's almost like it ended up doing like 75% of the time onto the plant, because it went to life. And
yeah, because I think it's the other way around. I think it's that the plant wants the light.
Oh yes.
So it affects the random number generator, so it gets more light. Because I mean, the random number generator in a lamp is just electricity. It's not very conscious.
Which for me feels like that just proves that you know, like your thoughts are powerful, and that like it's not necessarily, it isn't necessarily random, and that we're all connected somehow, and that we're kind of co-creating this reality. Search quantum computers.
I think I haven't been researching it that much, but because I mean, science has a very specific belief in what quantum physics is, and I'm not sure they even know what it is. I mean, it's like, you know, like we had Newton's laws, and then the Newtonian laws seemed to work until you noticed that it didn't fit with the rest of the universe. So you had to come up with something else, and then it fit even better. And then they noticed that, well, Einstein's stuff didn't really work because you have this electric universe people that has an even better way of getting things to work together, like a more unified.
And like Mark Cummings was saying in that short little video he sent me, or even like that course that me and Danielle just took on the Resonant Science Foundation, it's about bringing back the concept of the ether, like bringing back the concept of space is not a vacuum. Space is not a vacuum. It's completely full.
Oh yeah, okay, here is I can really recommend The Power of Coincidence and Mark Cummings' Physics. I mean, basically 5 pages of his writings. There are several writings. I mean, one is called Space. I mean, but they're in the same PDF. I already sent you that, so. But I only read those 2 for now.